Which event from history will always be funny? The con man who sold the Eiffel Tower twice and got away with it. When Persian King Xerxes punished the sea for ruining his bridge. He tried to build a bridge across the Dardanelles to get to Greece faster, but storm destroyed the bridge. Infuriated with the sea, Xerxes ordered his soldiers to punish it by whipping it with chains 300 times and poking it with red-hot irons. Handcuffs were also tossed into the water to symbolize the sea's submission to his authority. Andrew Jackson taught a parrot how to swear, and it had to be removed from his funeral because it upset the attendees. In 1945, the Americans were pushing through Germany. General Eisenhower sent General Patton a message, instructing him not to take the city of Trier because it would require 4 divisions to seize the city. Patton sent a message back saying, "Have taken Trier with 2 divisions, what do you want me to do, give it back?" In 1866, when going to war, Liechtenstein's army of 80 men came back with 81 men after making a friend from the enemy's side. The existence of the complaints tablet to 3,700 years after your death, having your name still associated with being a crook. You are the worst copper merchant I've ever heard of. Nazir. But you have heard of me. Dennis Rader asking the police if they could track him through a floppy disk and then replying no, so he sends the floppy disk. Damas. The Kettle War. It was the 8th of October. Dutch Kingdom and then Holy Roman Empire had a short naval battle, and the only casualty was a kettle full of soup that got hit by a cannonball, and that was the only shot that was fired. Qin Shi Huang managing to back away from Jing Ke's assassination attempt and managing to outrun him by running down the hallway and circling a pillar until his retainers arrived. Yakti Sak's worthy moment. In the 1950s, 2 guys ended up controlling 98% of the onion market in the US, which was done by convincing the farmers that grew them to sell to them, otherwise they would flood the market with onions. A little bit later, they flooded the market with onions to the point where a 50-pound bag of onions went for 10 cents, which was less than the bag containing them. These guys ended up making millions off of this, and because of them, trading onion futures in the US is now banned. In the Spanish Civil War, some nationalist pilots attached live turkeys to supply drops intended for a garrison under siege, so it would slow the fall when they flapped their wings. And we all know that turkey is also delicious. The King of France annulled his marriage to Eleanor of Aquitaine because she failed to give him a male heir. The official reason given was consanguinity; they were too closely related. She promptly married Henry, Duke of Normandy, future King of England, 8 weeks after the annulment. Over the following 13 years, they had 8 children together, including 5 boys. The King of France, meanwhile, only had 1 son by his 3rd marriage. I will never not find it funny that she popped out 5 boys to her new husband straight after her being cast aside for being unable to have a boy. Rudy Giuliani at the Four Seasons Total Landscaping. The 2021 Suez Canal obstruction. Potatoes were not very popular as a food in France. Like they were seen as fit only for animals. A pharmacist named Parmentier knew they were good food and wanted to popularize them among the working class. He got a 2-acre farm to grow potatoes and placed armed guards around it. People assumed armed guards meant something very valuable was growing there, so they began to steal the potatoes. That's how potatoes became popular in France's working class. One game where Michael Jordan scored 69 points and Stacey King scored 1. A reporter asked Stacey what he thought of playing in that game, and he stated, "I will always remember this as the night that Michael Jordan and I combined to score 70 points." During the heights of the Cold War, somewhere deep in the halls of the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, intelligence officers came up with the idea to parachute thousands of XL condoms labeled medium onto. The idea behind the operation was to undermine the morale of people living in the USSR by implying that the men of US were superior. The experimental butt bomb of World War II comes to mind. Briefly, it was a canister bomb filled with hundreds of bats carrying small timed incendiary devices. The bomb was to be dropped over Japanese cities at night. A parachute would deploy and the bomb would release the bats. At sunrise the bats would seek shelter, lodging in the eaves of wooden structures. The resulting widespread fires would cause havoc and destruction. The bat bomb was developed and tested at a cost of $2 million but was never actually used against Japan. I think it was a pretty funny idea. In World War II the Germans built a fake airfield with wooden fake planes as a decoy in Holland. When they'd finally finished it, the British dropped a wooden bomb on it. During the Salem trials a farmer sued a snail because it was loitering on his land. On Sunday when the snail did not show up it was marked as absent and guilty. That time Fabio got hit in the face by a goose on a roller coaster. Everyone mentioning the Emu was not even Australia's funniest moment in history. Harold Holt was the country's Prime Minister in 1967 when he went for a swim in the ocean and went missing, presumed drowned. 2 years later they named the Harold Holt Memorial Swimming Pool. The Vice POTUS Dick Cheney shooting his friend in the face on a hunting trip and the friend apologizing for being in the way. He was fine by the way. The Anglo-Zanzibar War lasted about 40 minutes, and made about 500 casualties. One of the longest war lasted for a little more than 335 years, between the Dutch and the Isles of Scilly, and made 0 casualty, not even a shot fired. The Emu War. Brazilian independence is painted as the emperor screaming independence or death while mounted on top of a white horse beside the Ipiranga River. In reality, it was a donkey. The emperor was sick and stopping to shit every few minutes. The landscape is not that one from the painting. A total lie, but funnier than what we learn in school. The Austrian army attacking itself in 1788, also known as the Battle of Caransebe's. It basically started out as a fight over schnapps between different units of the multilingual army which escalated into a full-scale skirmish. Soldiers calling each other Terci used as a slur as the Austrians were fighting the Ottomans at the time, as well as calls to stop the fight halt being understood as Allah didn't either. The casualties of the battle are said to be up to 10,000 dead, depending on which account you believe. He's scarcely remembered today, but Harold Stassen ran for the Republican presidential nomination in 1948 and 1952. After taking a break, during which he ran unsuccessfully for several other offices, he ran for president again in 1964. And also in 1968, 1972, 1976, 1980, 1984, 1988 and 1992. His quixotic candidacies and his atrocious toupee described in one article as looking like a sullen possum that had been dipped in bronze made him a perennial target of TV comedians in my youth. When Belgium broke the record of days without a government, they celebrated, had a beer and carried on with their lives. No chaos, disruption or rioting. Mary Toft convincing a load of doctors and clergymen, including the personal doctor to the King of England, that she could give birth to rabbits. The death of Tycho Brahe. He was known to be exceedingly vain, for a guy with a prosthetic nose lost the real one in a duel. He was attending some kind of awards ceremony in which he was to receive one. He had to urinate, but he didn't want to leave the room and miss his big moment. So he held it until his bladder ruptured. The last invasion of Britain in 1797. Upon landing, the French invasion force appeared to have run out of enthusiasm for the cunning plan. Perhaps as a result of years of prison rations, they seemed to have been more interested in the rich food and wine the locals had recently removed from a grounded Portuguese ship. After a looting spree, many of the invaders were too drunk to fight, and within 2 days, the invasion had collapsed. Tate's force surrendered to a local militia force led by Lord Cawdor on February 25, 1797. That one guy in Pompeii that survived the outbreak of the Vesuvius just to be crushed by this huge boulder hurtling through the air. It's the 79 AD version of being crushed by a falling